the other thing that frustrates me is this narrative that people want to create that, quote, we don't care. In my opinion, that can just be a lazy take. Like, you can always say that, but we're playing against a Panama team that, for example, had a game plan and they executed a game plan. We couldn't find the goals that we needed. He's talking about Copa America. They asked him about that as well. We couldn't find the goals that we needed, and then they scored in the last minute. It seems to me not the best take ever. I don't see a group of guys out there, especially when I'm out there playing. We all want it so bad, and sometimes it's not just a matter of caring. So just to say these guys don't care and bring guys that have pride, that's not really the answer. And there's a lot more to a soccer game that you need to do to win and care. I think a lot of us care. Shaq, thoughts?
I find that accusation a little cheap, that you don't care. And easy to throw out. It really is, because you don't have to quantify that in any way to say somebody doesn't play or somebody doesn't care. Listen, I really have no horse in this race. I'm not bothered at all. Herc described everything that's happening with US soccer, both on and off the field, as a dumpster fire. And I think that is playing a lot into what you're seeing in terms of who's saying what and doing which interviews and what answers they're giving around a lot of these issues. And it's almost odd that a year out from a World Cup that the US have qualified for as hosts, everybody seems to be protecting themselves. It's less about what's good for the team, what's good in the long term, but more about self-protection. A lot of this just feels like self-protection at this point. Maybe as well, a big part of this is, even though you have so many of the American players, American first-team players plying their trades in European football, maybe this team just isn't that good. And until the US recognizes that there is no God-given right for them to be dominating in CONCACAF or elsewhere, that it takes a whole lot more than a couple of players nicely placed in European clubs to be competitive, even in this region, a region that for years the US has been able to take for granted. It takes a whole lot more than that now. Nobody else is taking their positions for granted. Maybe the US needs to take that approach with who they are and how they go about their business. But before they even start doing that, again, to use Herc's phrasing, they've got to out this dumpster fire, which I'm not sure how they do, kind of given the fuel that inevitably will be thrown on it during the course of the next couple of months with the Gold Cup.
Herc?
You know, the we don't care narrative is driven by the players, not the pundits. The people who feel the U.S. men's national team don't care are fans, and they're entitled to those feelings. These are fans that invest lots of money and time, their resources, to go watch these players, to buy expensive tickets in an economy today that's not so easy. Situations where it's not so great for the U.S. men's national team, and they're still supporting these players. So when you hear that, that's from the fans. And I think most players will take that with a grain of salt. What these players don't like is when it comes from ex-players, because they're like, wait a second, you've been here. You should know what this is like. And no player will say, we don't care, because that's not the truth. Players care. Players invest their time, their energy, they sacrifice their families, they sacrifice tons of things to be there. It's a privileged position, which is why they care. But when you give the perception that you don't care, that is the problem. This team, they were gifted everything. So when Shaka talks about taking things for granted, the first ones to take things for granted are these players. These players, and I'm not just talking about Christian Pulisic, that's a little tough on him. Christian Pulisic wasn't gifted anything. Christian Pulisic debuted with Jurgen Klinsmann. Christian Pulisic single-handedly almost pulled the U.S. men's national team back into the World Cup in 2018 in Kova. If there was more Christian Pulisics, this team would have qualified. That's just a reality there. But the rest of these players, They cleared the pathway to give them appearances, give them caps. They didn't have the Josie Altidores, the Michael Bradleys breathing down their neck. They didn't have Tim Howard take this spot from me. They ushered those players out into the sunset and they said, this is your team now. We are playing with these teenagers. We're going to make it work. And they got to a World Cup that way. But they didn't take it from the veterans. So when these type of things happen, it does look like they don't care. And that is the issue. But I agree with Christian. Those who have been in these positions, who are trying to peddle the narrative that they don't care, it may look like they don't care, but we know better. That's the issue here. And it's up to Christian, it's up to Tyler, it's up to Weston, it's up to these players to dig themselves out of this. Because if they want people to perceive that they are invested, that they actually care, you could only do it on the field.
Yeah.
Because talking is cheap. And trust me, some of these guys are not good talkers.
But it is perception, and my perception is this.
As you redefine what's possible, Lexus refines what you deserve. Because a car that doesn't make you feel something is a car that stops short of amazing.
I believe Pulisic cares for the team. I mean, I have zero doubts that he cares for representing his country. Now, I also believe that I feel like he doesn't care for the current coaching staff. And I feel like he doesn't care for the federation.
Well, that makes a lot of people.
Yeah, and I feel like the way things are being or have been handled by the federation, by U.S. soccer, have really diminished Pulisic's and other players' feeling for the squad, feeling for the team. To me, it's completely unbelievable that professionals at this level, and I'm speaking of Christian Pulisic, but I'm also speaking of Mauricio Pochettino, who has managed at the elite level Paris Saint-Germain, Chelsea, Spurs, and as a player representing the Argentinian national team. I cannot understand how both sides were not able to come to an agreement and have a unified message. Listen, this is what's going to happen. We both feel it's the same for the team. We both feel this is the best for the player.
That's what should have happened.
And we're going together in this. I just cannot understand the disconnection between those two sides. And now that's going to permeate. That's going to even have a bigger impact on the rest of the team.
If I may, this federation is just so out of touch. There should have been somebody at the federation who says, hey, okay.
Absolutely.
Enough with the pissing contest here. We have to be united. There has to be a front that we put on. There has to be, even if it's a facade, you have to play the part here. Yeah. Because the he said, and you're going on podcasts to do it, is a terrible look. How is there nobody at the federation with the leadership or with the know-how or the common sense to get these two in a room? There was a phone call and that was it. And now each one is going rogue by themselves, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse as the U.S. men's national team get worse. Because if the U.S. men's national team was winning, I repeat, if the U.S. men's national team was winning, this would be a non-factor. This would be a non-factor. But the U.S. men's national team is terrible, and the federation right now lacks the capacity, so this is a major factor. And you're a year out from what is going to be, or should be, the biggest moment in the history of U.S. soccer. And this is what you're showing the world. Yeah. Right now, a year out, this is what you're showing the world.
You can have your world-class manager and your world-class player going opposite sides. You just can't have that as a federation.
And they all want the same thing. They're all bothered about the same thing.